Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of BLS. I'm your host, B-Man, and I'm here with the Tapin from Rgb.Industries. Hey, man, how are you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Doing
That's
good.
awesome. Awesome. Great to have you. Yeah, so today we're going to look at another Solana Grizzlython participant, which is the project called Rgb.Industries. And I think we can dive right into it. We're curious to hear what your idea was, what it is, but maybe you can start out sharing screen and just look at it first, however you please.
Sure, man. Yeah. Let's see here if I can pull up the screen share.
Sure.
But I think no, I'm not seeing that. So I'll do. Yeah. So we submitted a Grizzlython submission. We submitted a submission to the Grizzlython hackathon with a friend of mine, a Twitter friend of mine. It looks like I can do a screen share here. I figured it
Cool.
out. Entire screen sharing. I got some tabs up right now. I think that's good.
Right. Let me pull this one in, and
I'm
then we'll be joined on the site. Yeah, there you go.
We're good. I'm learning Elixir Lang right now. Shout out to Jose Valley.
There you
Valley.
go.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but yeah, I'm really interested in the Phoenix Live View. I'm not sure if you've heard that tech before. Maybe
I heard about Elixir, Phoenix, both of them, and
Yeah,
people seem to be very, very happy with it.
yeah, I'm pumped. So yeah, I've spent the last like week or two actually configuring Vim. I've got like
Huh.
I've got Vim like running for the first time with the Elixir LS. So I've been having that took me a couple days to get that going, but
Nice.
yeah, taking a break from some of the Solana stuff.
Right.
But so I think we've got the screen sharing right,
Yeah,
and
we can see it right now.
I've got the app up. So I'll do. I guess I'll connect my wallet while we're talking. So this is a proof of concept. Type that wrong. The app static website that we submitted to the Grizzlython,
Hmm.
and it's so this web UI that we've got in front of us is it's got about a day or two of massaging into it. So like the UI is not that interesting right now.
Right.
There's a lot of interesting TypeScript and Elm and Rust behind the scenes, which I think we should probably spend most of our time there.
Sure.
But I got into this project with Sean Green. You can find him on Twitter under Dreamfinder _Dreamfinder _. Maybe we can throw that link in later.
Yeah.
He's the mastermind behind Rgb.Industries. This is an idea, a game. So he's he's one of the most talented designers, project managers I've ever worked with. I'm still fairly young. I'm 28, but I've been working in the industry for about 10 years now as a developer. And I've seen, I've seen like a whole bunch of characters, but this guy is really talented and he's really interested in gaming and game design. So this is sort of his one of the many ideas he's been working on.
Right.
And so I actually was brought on just as like a freelance developer, and
Got it.
and I was working. I'm working still hourly on this project. We've been Sean's has been like really supportive of my work. I've been, my shit posts on Twitter and all this. I primarily tweet. I do a lot of like kind of like Solana stuff and just sort of full stack development, not
Right.
necessarily relating to blockchain at all. So
Yeah.
we met on Twitter just like you and I.
Sure. Yeah. Interacting.
And, yeah. So anyway, so this game here, this is sort of so again, this isn't. I can do my best to sort of pitch from my perspective as a developer and someone who didn't design this game. And there's a whole roadmap, and Sean has been thinking about this idea for over a year now. And I was like, hey, well, we can put that on chain.
Right.
I'm somebody who developing in Web3 I find it attractive to actually build on chain. You see a lot of D apps that have got a little bit of blockchain and a whole lot of centralized AWS servers.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's a lot of, and that kind of speaks to the use cases of Web3. There's a lot of things that it's good at, and there's a lot of things that it's not good at. And like I feel like we should be honest with ourselves, look ourselves in the mirror, and say, hey, maybe this just isn't a good use case for blockchain. But this game in particular is looking to build. It's gamifying. It's building a primitive, primitive resources on the Solana blockchain. So in this case, we actually right now in this demo we have, and this is on mainnet, so I guess it's technically not a demo.
It's the real deal.
But so we've got red, we've got green, and we got blue RGB, the color, the color wheel, and so you can stake this stuff. It looks like we've got some TVL. We've got 45 Sol staked in the game right now. Let me see if I actually have some Sol in this wallet, and we can stake some stuff. Yeah, we've got so basically the idea is like you stake some red, you stake some green, you stake some blue. This is working with the and we'll get into it in just a few minutes here. The SBL, the Solana program library token program, using the W Sol. So basically, like you stake
the wrapped Sol.
Yeah, the wrapped Sol. You stake some of that, and you get some of this red token back. And there's a counter. We can just I'll get into the details later. Basically, you stake Sol in exchange for red, green, and blue not pixels yet, just colors that can be crafted or traded or painted. So basically, like you let's see if I already have some of these tokens or these colors in my vault. So like you have like these primary colors, and you can combine them together to create secondary colors. And right now we're just working at a bit level of 1, but the smart contracts will work at any arbitrary bit depth.
Right.
But it's really kind of like, how do you visualize that? Because you quickly get into like right now in 2D, you quickly get into 3D spaces and the stuff that actually can't be visualized. And right now we don't have the trade enabled, but so we have a vault of colors that I have crafted basically by you burn some red, you green some blue, and you get magenta. I think that's magenta. That's so you get these SBL tokens back, and then you can create a canvas, and you can actually burn these pixels. Right now, I don't even have a drag and drop. Like that's how demo this UI got into it. We focused entirely on the Rust smart contract and TypeScript and Elm side of it, and not much of the UI until the last days of the hackathon of like, hey, let's just sort of present this stuff. But yeah, you have like different colors you can burn, and what will happen is you'll mint an NFT, and there's a PDA, a program derived address, that actually is tracking which you can basically verify that you have burned 20 an amount of the blue pixel to create this this NFT. And so we're using the Metaplex token metadata program to do that, and it shows up in your wallet. It can be exchanged and these sorts of things, and later on the program you can even redeem an NFT. So you can feed the NFT to the smart contract and say, hey, here's an NFT, and you can verify that these pixels have been burned to create this NFT, and it'll actually destroy the NFT and give you the pixels back.
And so that's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. And so, I mean, I've been writing all the code, and I geek out. Like, we're looking at a whole lot of interesting stuff. Like there's automation, there's sort of cranks that we need to automate with Clockworks. And so I'm nerding out from an engineer perspective, but Sean Dreamfinder, the guy who's designing all this stuff, he's a really talented designer just in many ways. And he's looking at ways to explore this space of gamification of incentivizing actions on chain. And one of the best use cases, in my opinion, for blockchain right now is really sort of just digital assets. Like you get into DePIN and like what Helium's doing, and that stuff's really interesting too. But you get into hardware. You need crypto-enabled aware hardware to do anything useful there. So right now, games is like a really good way to say verifiable assets, and so there's staking. There's a lot of interesting crafting, and like he's got different levels of the stuff that he's designing that I can't really speak to right now, unfortunately. There's a white paper if you dig down to this question mark down here, that I encourage listeners here to sort of check out the vision of what Sean's designing. Who's definitely his vision, and much more eloquent than I am. But I can speak to the technical stuff here, which is and sort of the existing state of the program, not necessarily where it's going, but kind of where the existing state, because there's already a lot of interesting code that's been developed. So that's my forte here, and kind of what we're interested in, right? So I think that's probably a decent intro to our submission. We're waiting to hear back.
Tomorrow. When we're recording,
tomorrow.
It's in one day. It's like the 6th of April, and the 7th they will announce it.
Have you checked out any of the? I'm stop sharing here just for a moment, so I can kind of see us and get more acclimated again. But have you checked out? Like, have you been digging through
a bunch of them?
Like,
so
anything that's caught your eye?
The one thing I was really interested in was actually my last participant here on the stream, which was Emil with Cash App, with Tap Cash, which is a copy of Cash App. And but most of the time I've been working on my own submission, which is PubKey. So
cool
that's that.
Gum is fun.
Yeah, exactly. Building on top of Gum is fun, and but I haven't dived into a lot of them really. But I think it's interesting to see what's there. This is also, I think, one of the reasons I'd like to bring people on the show, because I think it's way more interesting if somebody tells about the project and what's behind it than I think. So I did check the website, Rgb.Industries, connected my wallet, and saw I could draw an NFT.
Yeah,
that was kind of cool. But now when I hear your story, it's like like you're doing it with colors now, but I think nothing prevents you from doing this with other type of assets, or like if you have like traits of a character or whatever, I think you can do very similar stuff, right? It's a pattern that you can apply to way more stuff than just color skill.
From what I understand of hanging out with Sean Dreamfinder, I'm not sure this whole crypto like alias thing is a bit tough. But hanging out and kind of talking about this stuff, it's really a thought exercise of this incentivization, right?
Yeah,
designing incentivization, sort of. You initialize resources, and certain you can interact with these resources, and there's compound effects. So you have things like burning. That's like a really interesting mechanism. You have sort of compound effects where if people are specialized in a certain direction, I always kind of go back to RuneScape and like, I don't know if you ever played any of that.
I haven't played that. I heard a lot.
Yeah, but just sort of just like grinding away at certain things. If you specialize in a certain way, you might get more of an exponential curve in a certain direction, so you can produce more of this crafted asset, and that there's markets that open up where people are trading. So it's a thought exercise where RGB is something that people can visualize, people are familiar with. You can mix colors together, you can actually decompose colors, you can paint with stuff, and there's a lot of other things that can be done. But really, like you said, there's this sort of thought. It's a thought exercise that can be applied to innumerable amount of things, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. A
it's
few
exciting, man.
observations. Sorry.
No, it's exciting. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. It's a few observations here. So one of the things that's interesting is that you can actually burn stuff. So you get your colors, right? You buy your colors, you mix and match, and then you're gonna draw something. You actually burn these colors, so that's kind of okay. But then the idea of redeeming this, and then basically you can get your colors back. Now you don't have the NFT anymore, but you will get the colors back, which allows you to construct something else. I think this is super interesting and pretty novel thing in this space. I think NFT is generally the end goal, right? And there it is, and now you're going to trade the NFT, or that's it, or use it. And then, but in your app, you actually allow you to go back and undo that thing.
Yeah, like there's this dance between, so you stake Sol and then you get this fungible token that's printed from the contract, right?
Right.
And the way that it's printed is, so there's a tokenomics curve that's based on, well, time. So that's one of them. Like right now, I staked 1 Sol, and right now and what happens is like the program stamps a time, so you get a Unix timestamp, and right now it's incrementing by minute, just for the sake of the people get a feel of the game. But I think the idea is to actually to timestamp by day, and then there's also, you can introduce like TVL, like the reward, like the emissions of like the R token is a function of TVL, or it might also be a function of the TVL in the blue pot, and these sorts of things. But basically, there's this idea of staking Sol against the tokenomics curve, and then you get this primitive resource back, and then it can be used to effectively you get an SPL token, right? It's a primitive resource, and it's going up in supply, it's going down in supply based on how people are interacting with it, burning it. But then it can be burned into an NFT. So you're going from a fungible token to a non-fungible token, but then you can go back the other way around. And so that's cool. But there's a lot of stuff to explore there. I'm really happy to be working on that project. But like I said, I'm really happy to be on the engineering side and just be able to. I've been developing in the Solana space for a year and a half now. Exploring a lot of different product ideas. Interested in the NFT space, but it's nice to have a friend and a client to work with and to like do productive stuff, because I've developed so much stuff that that I don't know. It's a bit candid here, but the NFT space, it feels like oftentimes people, it's really about the culture, I feel like right now, and there's, as a developer, you need people around you, right? You need product people, you need designers, you need people who are tapped into the culture to kind of make things happen. And as a solo developer, we need people to work with. So
yeah. I mean, I'm also very much coming from technical angle. Being in the Solana ecosystem has been interesting because of people from the art scene coming in and building on that kind of stuff, which I definitely recognize as something that I can do, and that they spend hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours of learning. So definitely a bunch of recognition there. Also, honestly, a lot of cheerleaders, people that are just hanging around and hoping that the price will go up. That's kind of inevitable. It's definitely something that I had to go get used to. Like, if you're working with a bunch of tags, and I was like big in the Angular ecosystem, right? So yeah, there's like tribalism. It's Angular versus React, or it's Angular versus Vue, or whatever, and then it's a lot of people talk about it, but in the end of the day, there's no monetary involvement. So everybody preaches their thing because they think it's the best thing. And then, like, we're going to talk about Elm in a second. It's not popular. It's been around way before React, Vue, and Angular.
It has. That's actually
it's OG.
It actually inspired React. They took a lot of what was going on with Elm.
Yeah. So the whole functional approach, that idea.
Right. Yeah. Message passing, like reactive functional programming.
Yeah.
But so I just quickly, I had, because like you mentioned the tribalism with like React
front end frameworks.
Vue. but those things don't have a token, right? So when
Yeah.
you add a token into the mix, does it get more? Like, is there even more tribalism? Like, does it 10x? Is it 100x? Like, or
Yeah.
maybe it's the other way around. Maybe people, because there is no token, they're there just because they like this tech or whatever. Maybe
Yeah.
they're even more passionate or crazy about this. Because I feel like there's some people that in the crypto space, they've got a bag and like they'll FUD or like
Yeah.
will try to pump like a bag, whether or not they actually
Yeah.
like this thing,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know, but also people get passionate about their money too. So I don't know. It's an interesting observation too.
Yeah, I definitely think having money invested makes it different, right? So like if I only time is probably more important than money, but I think a lot of people don't see it this way. So the hyper focus is on accumulating more money, and they'll put time in doing that. So people put like, I don't know, $500 in some token, they'll cheer because it goes up, and then they figured out, oh, I actually bought at the top, and now it goes down. So they'll keep on cheer. Like there's today, if you look on Twitter for SafeMoon, there's still people that say, oh, SafeMoon's going to be the major token in the world. They're going to now, anytime it's going to go to wallet. That's been around for like, I guess, almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen unless Elon Musk starts to like pump it.
Throw is a fab icon, or I didn't pronounce that right, but dude, like I got Dogecoin in my fucking like browser window right now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
oh man, like
Yeah.
it's not illegal, but like, dude, like
Yeah.
it's just crazy. Like, I mean, it really speaks to like the power of this digital currency and like
Yeah.
clout. And just like if enough people get exposed to it, like it's gonna go up in value, and then
Yeah.
it goes up, and then it goes up, and then and then we dump, right? Like now I'm just saying like the hypothetical, like it's so it's if you've got enough of a social reach, like it's you can really do a lot with this stuff. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like when you attach a token to a social network,
Yeah.
it's nuts, man. So
Well, I think one of the differences is like, um, let's take a token. Let's take Bonk, for instance. People that are heavily invested in Bonk, they can start cheering with it. They will do it. Like go online. There's people that are just all about Bonk. They have it in their username, in their profile. It's all Bonk, Bonk, Bonk. Those are just shillers, right? Whatever. Fine. Let them do their thing. In the front end framework, to focus just on that, but it happens everywhere, like Android, iOS, Vim, Emacs, whatever. There's always going to be tribalism and wars. But I think a big difference is if you and I get in a conversation about front end frameworks, whatever side we are on, we at least need to know some basic knowledge. Because if a third person comes in and says, "Hey, you should use Ember or jQuery," and they didn't develop on it, it's very easy to like to weed them out because they cannot really catch up with the convo. And instead of they see themselves as an investor, and they put like $100 or five, I don't know how much they put it in a coin. They don't know shit about. But what they can do is shill it because they like read the white paper or the light paper these days. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting world, and yeah, for sure.
should we dive into the front end framework
Let's
debate a
check
little
it
bit?
out.
I'd love to talk about Elm a little
Yeah,
bit. I published a right before writing the code for RGB.Industries. This was like my like 10th, like whatever. Like I've written a lot of Solana dApps on, excuse me, Elm dApps on Solana, and
right.
I built this custom wallet integration with just Phantom Wallet. I just haven't gotten around to integrating with
The others.
the wallet stand. This was the wallet standard. I'm sorry, Steven Lucier. I'm sorry, man. I
He'll get it.
Jordan.
Bro.
I'm sorry, guys. It'll happen. It will. I swear. When yeah, with as soon as I need to, it will happen. That's
If enough
reactive
people ask,
development. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
but until then, we're good. We're just with where we're at. I'm interested in backpack too, but you know,
yeah,
we'll get there. But anyways, I like was like, okay, let me put this into a GitHub template that I can easily fork, and I reposted that. Excuse me, I tweeted that. Totally retweeted it, and I felt that was like a nice pat on the back. It's like,
sure.
man, like you spend a year developing this shit, and you end up kind of doing some cool stuff where
yeah, that's cool. I actually looked it up. The first time we interacted on Twitter was because you built the meme race, which I think was for the last hackathon, the previous one. It was
that
the
wasn't
time.
even it wasn't even a hackathon. That was literally just like the bonk pump. And like
Right.
I had been in my room on like my philosophical fuck shit coins. Excuse me. Wow, that was like, I don't know how PG-13 this is, but okay, we've got shite coin. We've got shite coins, and like I'm this developer that's in it for the tech, and like I really don't like this whole pump and dump thing. And but here's this new dog coin. But then after like a year of like being poor and like developing all this cool tech and no one giving a shit, I'm like, okay, let's make some money with this dog coin, you know? So we built Meme Race with a buddy of mine that honestly was end to end pretty cool. And there's a lot of good tech sitting there that's waiting to be taken off the shelf.
Yeah, very cool. And what I read, I just looked up the thread again. It was like at the time I was still working at Kin. I was CTO at Kin Foundation, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. But whatever. That's the whole other topic. Well, what I realized was, hey, cool, somebody's doing something else. So I'm coming from the Angular community into the Solana ecosystem. It's all React, and I'm not like religious with front end frameworks. I'll use whatever works for me, right? I'm pretty flexible. I did a bunch of freelancing in the time. I used to not like React. Then I got hired to do a bunch of React. I spent a year getting paid doing it. And I actually had to say, there's actually a ton of things to like about it. Besides things I don't like. But in the Solana ecosystem, as you know, it's just like the common denominator. So for us at Kin, it just makes sense to standardize on that because it's what everybody uses, and everybody in the team at least knew a little bit of React.
Right.
And then I'm not the type of guy that says, hey, I'm the CTO here, so now we're all going to write Angular. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's like scratching my own itch. I don't see that useful, but I do see this and I recognize this, and I think it's awesome that you just do something else. I know the heavy duty team, they built the Angular wallet standard, right, for Angular because nobody uses it. Exchange Art actually uses it. So there's people in the ecosystem that do use Angular.
Yeah.
But it's great to see more diversification there as well. And
totally, man.
Let's take a look at it. So from a personal point of view, first time I heard about it was around, I think 2011. So Elm, yeah. And I was a teacher at university back in the Netherlands at the point, and I was teaching web development, but really HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like really the basics, right? And one of the students there, smart guy, he was like, you should check out Elm because it's really elegant, and it's and I did check it out, and I never had the opportunity to learn it. But what I did like, it's like you write very little code compared to JavaScript. It's way more easy to wrap your head around, even from looking at it, not writing. So yeah, I'd love to get I'd love to have you show what it's about and what you like about it, and honestly, what you don't like about it.
Is it a share screen or like?
Sure, let's share screen. Let's look at some examples.
Because like I feel like I can. Let's see here, man. Like, do I open an IDE? I gotta open the IDE. Sure. Otherwise,
we haven't had code on the stream, and we're half an hour in, so that's about time, I think.
Yeah. Let's see your entire screen. This will do. Like I said, I've been playing with NeoVim for the last few days. But I don't have the Elm LS language server configured yet. So we're going to open IntelliJ, which like surprisingly has got great support for Elm and like Rust and like a whole lot of not Java stuff.
IntelliJ editors are my go-to, and I'm a big fanboy of WebStorm, but I got the whole suite, so I tend to use Golang. Go to Goland for Go, and then PyCharm for Python. I love these IDEs, man. I mean, Visual Code, sure, but for me, this is the real deal. But again, it's not a form of tribalism, right? There's people going hardcore on VS Code.
There is tribalism involved, but you're playing the safe card here. No, I just have never had a reason to migrate. I was doing a whole lot of Scala development a few years ago at my previous job, and
I think I can. It's pop on the screen.
I'm gonna bring this over here just so I can see it still.
Sure. And if you're on a recent version of this, there's actually ways to bump up the font size a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Is that really small?
Yeah, it's I think a few ticks up, and now they recently, but I think they only added this to WebStorm still.
Yeah, I
They had
actually
a
have
new
never been able to bump this up. Let me see if I can, because I can just hop into the GitHub browser as well.
Yeah, that's easier. We can just look at it that way.
It's a bummer, man. Well, here we get that cascading effect. Okay, let's see here. GitHub. Let's pull up RGB because like we're using that. Solana Elm stuff, anyways. So, should I increase? Should I beef
this
that
is
up?
great. This is great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what we've got? I mean, we've got. Are we curious about Elm? I just.
Yeah, I think let's start with the entry point. Like, what is first thing? Main.elm seems like a great thing to start, and feel free to go from there and touch on what you think is interesting.
So I mean, where this app actually start is the init function, which I think is in state local. I'm like so used to this grep stuff now with no, it's model init. So let's go into model. Where is model?
Model.elm.
And there's a init function there, and it's actually invoked from the main module. But basically, like you're gonna parse the URL. It's gonna figure out where you're at, and then it's gonna update the local state, and then global is gonna be default, and there's no exceptions. So that's basically where you start your app, and then at this point you start clicking around. And it starts firing messages. So like basically the whole thing. So a caveat. So like I got started with backend development, and I never was interested in web development until a buddy of mine. I was doing like a bunch of pure functional Scala development at my previous employer, and then a buddy of mine at the company I was working for. Shout out to Taylor, Swift engineer.
Taylor Swift engineer. You can't make that up.
No, I swear to God. So this guy's Taylor, and he would go by Swift engineer, and like his profile picture was always like Taylor Swift with this pixelated Taylor Swift. Yeah, he's this kid's a genius, and he put me on the Elm, and it like kind of brought me into this web development world, and then now I sort of figured out kind of how all these HTTP servers that work at a low level. I've found like, okay, you've got this back end stuff, but until you're like your own client, you really don't get the full picture. So it was a blessing in disguise and the TypeScript. But so
and for you, it felt like Elm was a way to express web development in a way that worked how your mind thinks about code. Is that correct? Does that make sense?
Well, I came again from this world of like pure functional programming in Scala, where everything is statically typed and you get like exhaustive pattern matching at compile time. And then I looked at JavaScript and saw just a bunch of global mutable state everywhere, and was like, well, that sucks.
That's ugly.
and I don't want to do that. And so then when I found Elm, and it was like this bespoke language that just does one thing, delightful web apps, and a compiler targets JavaScript, and there's this promise of not having to write JavaScript. The spoilers, you do have to write JavaScript because all the dependencies of anything useful is in JavaScript. So like you have to interrupt between the two. So you do that with Sorry, yeah.
You'll end up writing a bunch of glue code basically between npm packages and Elm.
Yeah, like anchorlang, for instance. Like I don't want to write those decoders, those Borscht encoders, decoders, and Elm.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I would, but like I need to make a little more money in this space before I'm like doing that shit, So like I'm gonna use the TypeScript encoders, decoders that are that Armani gave us, and I'm just gonna like invoke a message from Elm and say, hey, TypeScript, go get this, derive this PDA, fetch it, decode it, and then actually like validate it and decode it, and then encode it, and then send it as a JSON message back to Elm. So like you get this cost, but honestly, these apps are like snappier than most React or Next.js apps that I've seen. But to the point of like Elm, I think that this is a good, like this is the selling point, right? So like your app is defined, it's statically typed, it's defined at compile time. And so what you end up doing, at least the way I develop Elm apps, is I define all the possible states of my application,
right?
Beforehand, before I implement the HTML, before I implement really even the messages to bounce between these states. So the way Elm is working is you basically define its global state. There's well, I've sort of defined this version of local state.
Right?
But you have like, so let's go into like local sRGB. So we have okay, so we got to go model state user. I really wish we were in an IDE, but so this is our where we're storing the state. But again, like we have these possible states in our application. Right. So we have like the top, we have the stake, we have the craft, the vault, the paint, like, and so like the app can only go these ways. And like it's enforced at compile time. And I sort of define where my app is in this mental model. I start here, and then I start going in. I add a URL parser, and then okay, now I've got the URL here, and this is some empty HTML. Then I actually start writing the HTML, and then the way that you actually bounce back and forth between states is you send messages to the update function, and the update function at compile time says, "Hey, like, I got this message. What do I do with it?" So, hey, the URL changed, and the URL changed, and I got the URL. How do I update my state? Once my state's updated, then the virtual DOM just updates the HTML accordingly based off, because the compiler forces you to implement HTML for every single possible state in your application. Full stop. Like your Elm app won't compile. Yeah. Unless you implement HTML for every single possible state. So if you get a message that says, hey, like from admin, initialize, then you can here. I'm actually not even updating my model because it's just me. But like from the user, you might have like, hey, href to the vault. Yeah. Vault page. And then, hey, like update my local state to vault. And like, don't touch the global state, don't touch exceptions, and there's no commands. Commands is how you basically get when the Elm receives a message, and these messages can come from like an on click. So you have like, you embed these listeners in your HTML, and it says like on click when I send this message, and then so it could be an href, it could be harvest, it could be mint, and so my model's waiting here. So when I get a mint message, just, throw the loader up and encode a message to TypeScript that's actually going to do all the anchor TypeScript stuff. So for me, like this stuff, I got started here for web development, and I've done some contract work with React projects, and it's like, it just doesn't do it for me. Like as a language, JavaScript, TypeScript, it does. There's just too many ways to drop the ball, and
sure.
So
yeah, interesting. It looks like the pattern here. I mean, I'm not I never did computer science, so I basically really rolled into it. My biggest treatise that I've been
me neither, man.
So, yeah, okay, just self-educate,
totally.
Right?
Yeah.
But it seems like a big message pattern, message bus system, which automatically brings my mind to, it's like a one-way loop, right? It's like you don't have like magic bindings, two-way bindings, and all of that crap where you have to get rid of think about it. It really seems like you declare your desired state and all the possible desired states, and Elm will enforce you to make sure that you implemented these all.
Exactly.
And as of that, it's a matter of passing around messages which are captured and handled, and then rinse and repeat from there. That's how it seems, right?
Rinse and repeat in a recursive way. This is recursive, man. Like the way that you actually iterate through collections in functional programming, including Elm, is with recursion.
Right.
And it's this. I'm trying to figure out. So it looks like I got my IDE open. Let me. That's Spotify. Where are we at right now? We are here. GitHub. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like there's no like clearing global. There's no like, hey, we need to like if this field is defined, then do this thing, and if this is empty, then make sure you do this. It's like no, like this, like this is where we are, and now I'm gonna do this thing, and it's forced. But you can see this is the entry point into the JavaScript land, and so basically I have my app, which is Elm, which is how I send my messages back to Elm. And then I get JSON, and I'm logging my JSON just because I want to see it. And I'm going to parse it, and then I'm going to say, hey, who sent me this message? Was it the connect? And here's the wallet integration where I'm actually going to say, hey, get Phantom. And then here's actually where I'm actually get global is just a method. The way that I write my TypeScript, because I'm not managing any state here, they're all actually stateless. We say pure functions. There's inputs and there's outputs. It's not updating any state. It's just basically saying, hey, like if I got the user stake red message, I'm going to get Phantom provider. I'm going to give it to Anchor, and then I'm going to invoke the stake red method. And then this method is going to say, hey, Elm, I failed or I succeeded, and then the Elm app updates, and so then it just keeps going and churning. So for me, it works, man. But I'm an indie dev, like if I was the CTO of a big company, and it was like, we're building a team, this is a tough sell. I actually at my previous company, that's what they did, and then they ended up moving to React just because the developers are not as curious as some others,
One of the so when I started my my freelancing gigs, one of the things I did was helping teams implement Angular, right? And I did a bunch of React to Angular migration, which is great, and the ecosystem loves it. It's like, oh, another app from React that converted back. But after a while, people figured, oh, you can also do the reverse. It's like, sure, I can also translate Angular back to React. It happens, and I think what you say, it's a hard sell. But yeah. In the end of the day, I'm all for people should use whatever works for them, and apparently Elm makes you a very proficient dev. So that's definitely good.
For me alone, I'm using it, and like my clients, they all they see is a web page that like is responsive and it works. If I were to build a team, I would use Elixir for server side rendering. That's what I would be doing right now.
Right.
Out of
interesting. Maybe at some point we'll have another stream talk about Elixir, because I'd love to hear more about that. So yeah, you're having Rust here up front. Let's take a look at the program. You said a lot of the interesting stuff was in the Rust programs. So let's see what we got there.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this is interesting right here in this directory. So if you actually see, we've got 3 programs for sRGB. And this is the first time I've ever done this. And like you end up defining modules in your cargo.toml file, and it all worked. It took me a little bit to figure out, but you're able to share your compiled binaries amongst these modules. So it's a really nice developer experience. But I think that this is something I'm really happy with, for 2 reasons. Breaking up applications into many programs. There's bottlenecks with this Solana development stuff, because you basically, like, programs can only invoke programs because there's like this element of, it's not exactly recursion, but like you actually could do it recursively. And so the Solana runtime will defend against you invoking programs infinitely, because that's a security risk, right? So there's you can't just break every single method into a program and then like build this dependency stack as deep as you want. Like that's just
Got
not
it.
going to work.
Yeah.
But you can separate programs, and there's a few advantages. The first one is that the staking program that I invoked in the beginning of this demo, the stake red program for the wrap soul, that's probably the most stable part of the application. And so like we might reach a point. I'm gonna have to charge. I'm gonna have to put my computer in.
Okay,
in
that's
just
good.
just
We
a
can
minute or
take
so.
a short break in a second, any case.
Okay. Okay. So, but
Yeah.
I'll just drive this point home first
Yeah.
here, and that's that this staking mechanism is likely to become stable quite soon.
Right.
But I'm actively developing in this paint module here.
Right.
So am I going to push new binary to new binaries to this on-chain address and update this program because I'm pushing small bug fixes or whatever to the paint program? Meanwhile, all the staking methods are stable.
Just works.
And so when in this Web3 space, immutability is why we're here,
Yeah.
right? Like if I deploy this program and I've got the upload key, if I got the upgrade authority, like that's sketchier than using AWS. like that's even more sketchy than Web 2. Like I'm just some random dude with an upgrade authority and I can push updates whenever. I mean, honestly, this Metaplex stuff is a good example of it. They're just pushing updates to programs that every single NFT program depends on, or a project and so on. So it's an issue. And so what I'm getting at the point here is that I can isolate the staking mechanisms in the staking program, and I can eventually, much sooner than paint or craft, I can mark this program as immutable. Now that's a public resource. By the way, it's open source. It's verifiable, and that's not going anywhere. Now that's on chain forever. We've and I'm pushing updates to paint, and this isn't moving.
Yeah.
So that's the first point that I think is I'm really it's the first time I've done this, and I'm really happy with this as a developer, but also just as a community member, somebody who wants to participate as a message signer to smart contracts. I want to be able to trust this stuff. The only way to trust it is if that shit's immutable.
Yeah. For sure.
Remember that, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I thought, and it definitely shows the composability aspect of Solana, right? So you take something that works, stake works in isolation, and you compose it here with Paint method. But in your next Grizzlyton project, you might as well use the same stake mechanism. If you already have the program out there and deployed and it works, you can just tap into it and use it, right?
Totally. Yeah, like whether like other people want to build on top of this, or that's primarily why people will be splitting up programs, is to allow composability from outside. But you can even do it within your own program, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And someone might go in and start building on it, just like what you've done with the PubKey app and Gum is Fun.
Exactly.
That's brand new stuff, open source, and people are building on it. That's
I managed to integrate a smart contract. I didn't write any line of Rust for the whole PubKey project, and it works, and it definitely feels like mine. And obviously, credit where credit is due. I'll never hide the fact that I'm using Gum behind the scenes. That's what is there. Another interesting aspect, and it's something what I figured out in development. If your assets on chain, and in case of PubKey, it's your identities, right, and stuff you think about yourself. It feels kind of magic if I drain my local database and I fire it right up and I connect to my wallet, it auto populates everything because it gets it off of chain. I think that's magic, right? That's one of the things. How about we take a short break? I got to run to the bathroom. I'll be right back, and that gives you some time to wire up the charger.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Great.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Yo.
Hey, back from our little break, all wired up.
Back. Yeah, how's the audio? Is there I've had issues with my charger being plugged in and like my audio having the buzz.
Sounds crisp and clear.
Okay. Okay, cool. Good to hear.
So cool, yeah. We're looking at smart programs, just talking about composability. I'd say let's dive into one of them. Probably the most interesting one might be the paint one. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the paint one's cool, man. Like the steak, it's like standard. Again, like this stuff's open source, so
Right.
like, and this has got nothing to do with Elm or like some other weirdo stuff. Like this is anchor laying, this is Rust. So and we're using the SPL token program and the MPL Metaplex program library, token metadata program. So this is take it as a resource for anybody out there. I think like the stake one's interesting because there's a Unix timestamp that comes from the what is it, the system program.
Right.
But anyways, the craft one is cool too. There might be some interesting Rust there, but the paint's cool because there's two. So I like to break my directories up so I've got the main entry point where I'm defining the context and just the entry point here. So you've got like the methods of there's some
like your public API, if you will.
Exactly. And then I've got my instructions, and then I've got my PDAs. PDA being a program derived address. This is how Solana persists data, essentially.
Yeah.
Like there's accounts. Everything's an account. That's what they call it. And like there's accounts that like we think about them like wallets, basically, that have like the native SOL balance. But like for the most part, like you're going to be creating an accounts via accounts that are owned by smart contracts. That's how this whole decentralized and trustless stuff works. And they're going to be program derived addresses. So they're like deterministic addresses.
Yeah, basically
I'm not sure the audience here is.
Take your wallet, take the program, put them in a function, out comes your program derived address, right? Simple way to look at it.
Yeah, there's arbitrarily, like you can think about an array of inputs. So you've got like, it could be your wallet address. If there's some sort of account data that's managed by a specific wallet, you'll pass the public key of the wallet. You'll pass probably the public key of the program that manages that state in a trustless way. And then you might have some other sub query parameters, for lack of a better word, that will distinguish. You might have you might have many accounts for a given wallet and program. So you're going to have like query parameters that say, hey, this is my paint account. This is my crafting account. This is my vault account. So and it's for this wallet. So let's see here. In the instructions of this program, did I just click into that? I did. So instructions, paint. There's some cool shit going here. No, not there. So there's here we've got our mod.rust. It's basically just organizing the public API so the compiler knows where everything is, and then you've got your mint method. And this is standard MPL token metadata stuff.
Right.
I'm working with this stuff for like over a year. So there's nothing too interesting here. There's some debug logs actually. But more debug logs. Here's an artifact of Shadow Drive. So we're storing the data and the actual the image that's drawn on Shadow Drive, which is it's cool. I'm a fan. I also have got some hot takes on Shadow Drive, which I get into later. But we're updating some state. So like this proof we have a concept of a proof basically. So like this whole concept of painting, like, look, like I can paint whatever I want and I can submit whatever I want. The whole nature of smart contract programming is it's all defense. Like it's
Right.
literally all like, this is a public API. Anybody can hit it. There's nothing you can do about it. Anybody can write to it if you're not smart about it.
Yeah.
And so basically the whole programming model is protect who can write, program the right permissions, and just assume that everybody can read. And so like we're updating public, the state here for the proof of the wallet that's interacting with this program. So we're saying, hey, like we've minted another NFT, so we're going to increment the indexer. I'm going to assign the PDA of the mint to so basically we're updating some state. I'm saying that nothing's been burned here because that's going to happen. There's two instructions. There's the actual, like, we're going to mint the NFT, and then but I need to prove that I burned the pixels. And so
Got it.
the issue is with this program is that, and this is the truth with the NFT standard. Unfortunately, I wish it was a bit lower level. I wish it was on the same level as the SPL token program, because it composes the SPL token program, and it's pretty heavyweight. Like you
Right.
really, like if you're minting an NFT, like good luck packing any more instructions into that transaction. Like you've got 1,000 bytes
Yeah.
to fit into a transaction, and like 800 of them are going to go to minting this NFT. So like good luck, good luck doing anything
Squeezing it
else.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got to figure out a way to. The answer is you got to have multiple transactions, and
Yeah.
like you can do stuff in the client where like you sign many transactions at once. So there's no guarantee that they all land at the same time. You know what I mean? So like you got to have retry logic. It gets messy.
Yeah.
But so there's nothing too interesting here going on with this. It's just boilerplate. Like if anybody who's on still Anchor version 25 or lower and wants to mint an NFT in Anchor with Anchor Rust, it's a good reference for you.
Just the way.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so like that's just gonna work. But the burn mechanism is interesting. So here there's like this concept of arity. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Arity. So basically you have like a function that has potentially many like a variable number of inputs. So you have like
Hmm.
arity of one. That mean that you have like one input into your method, or you have an arity of two. You have two inputs to your method. So here
Got
we
it.
have a possible arity of 7, all the way from 1 to 7, and um, that's because we have 6. We've got 3 primary colors. We've got 3 secondary colors, and then we got the color white. So that's 7 colors, and so there's 7 potential colors, or in this case, SPL token balances that you might burn to prove that you've actually got the real deal here. So you've got the NFT. It's good. You've painted it. The browser has signed many transactions. We've minted the NFT. It's in your friggin' wallet, dude. Right? Like
Yeah.
it's on chain. You've got an NFT with the thing that you painted.
Yeah.
But as far as Rgb.Industries, as far as the game is concerned, you haven't burned anything. So like if you hand me that NFT, the program is gonna spit it back to you and say you haven't burned anything. So you got to invoke the second method. And so the client, there's some like switch cases going on where it says like if it's 1, then invoke 1. If it's 2, invoke 2. This sort of stuff. But basically, the reason why we had to break this up into different arities as opposed to, so in version, I believe 26 of Anchor, they introduce optional accounts.
Ah.
And I'm on Anchor 25 here, and it's actually minor version 0.25, not zero,
Sure.
not
Yeah.
major version 25. Those motherfuckers move fast, and they're pushing breaking changes
Oh,
all day long.
yeah.
So we'll say 25, but it's minor. So credit to them, it's a minor release still, and
Minor breaking changes. It's kind of common in
yeah.
Solana. It's part of eating glass, I guess.
No, it's how it is. I mean, they're hiding behind. Fuck, I don't want to say they're hiding, but they're doing a lot. They do a lot of great work, you know. But it's still that there's no major version yet. So basically,
Yeah.
assume that a minor change is breaking, and assume that a patch is actually like a feature update. It's like and hope that there might be a 1.0 someday.
Right. Right. Right.
Is basically how it goes. But yeah, so for 26, they actually have formal support for the NPL metadata program.
Hmm.
But when I tried updating, there was compiler issue. I'm trying to figure out if it was a Rust issue. My gut says that it was a TypeScript issue. I can't remember, but there was some BS going on with they moved like it just like it wasn't kosher.
Yeah.
And I already had a working version for 25, so I just kind of in the effort of moving quick. I don't have the optional accounts. So basically, if you pass in these instructions, are assuming that you have the token account associated with pixel number 4 already initialized.
Yeah.
So like what you could do is you could pass in these. You could just have an arity of 7 with non-optional accounts and just pass in pixels 1 through 7, or excuse me, colors 1 through 7, and then like let's say you're only burning 3 of them, you've only had balances for 4 of them, and then the other 3 you've never had a balance before. In
Yeah.
the instruction, in the anchor instructions here, we're using the init if needed. Let's get into some Rust macros. I'm like doing like a whole anchor fucking masterclass right now. I don't know
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's
It's
what
great. It's great.
I don't know if that's what we want, but
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get with it. It's definitely going to be an interesting reference for me. I'm still very new in Anchor.
okay. So
Like
let's get into the program.
one of the reasons I invite people like yourself is that I learn stuff as well as my
Yeah,
viewers. But it's also very much an ego thing. I hope you don't
that's
mind.
true. I don't know about ego. It's more just a curiosity thing,
I
right?
guess.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's not even ego. Yeah. You're right. It's
yeah.
curiosity. It's like learning on the spot.
Totally, man. So
Yeah.
here we've got like a burn pixels too. So this is a whole arity concept of like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So here we're saying that we're assuming that, man, I really wish I was an IDE and we could like dev some of it. We can like observe some compiler or like runtime issues and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
so we've got an ATA, which stands for a token count, but that A, so TA is token account. ATA is associated token account. And this is standard nomenclature. This is
Hmm.
um, I maybe would be more verbose, but this is like how like Rust docs. This is how they do it. ATA. So
Yeah.
associated token account. That means it was derived from your wallet plus the mint address, and then you have an ATA. It's a deterministic way to find like your token balance. Basically, you pass in the Pixel One mint, and you're saying this account is mutable. You're not saying there's different keywords you can pass. Like we could fucking even get into the anchor like docs, but like you can pass in mute. If you don't pass in mute, and then in your program you're manipulating data, the chain, so like your mutations won't actually be preserved. Like
Right.
it'll just ignore like what you did to that buffer. That
Will that
regardless if
compile
it
though?
was.
Rust doesn't pick it up.
So like this is it's a good question. The issue. So I'm be more choice with my words here. So like Rust, there's this is true with the reason why I chose Solana over like ETH, for example, is a total shameless developer choice. I wanted to build with Rust, and so my first experience with Rust was with building Anchor programs, and so I see these macros everywhere, and that's how they kind of like derive the encoders decoders. That's how they do the account initialization in Rust and et cetera. But they
Right.
kind of get a lot of abstraction in Rust in general,
Yeah.
which I've learned after the fact. Outside of Solana or Anchor, like Rust in general, they have traits, they have first class traits,
Yeah.
which like I could show you, but they do like macros all over the place. So The issue with macros is that there's holes in like your compile time, because like you're sort of interpreting like the byte array of the compiler, and like the developer of the macro is sort of just looking for certain things. So in this case, if you mark this as, if you delete that mute keyword, and then you go into your program and you're dealing with a mutable array, and you mutate that array, or maybe just a mutable, like, integer, and you increment that integer, what Anchor is going to do for you is it handles the whole, like, Anchor handles for them, it does a lot of things, but Anchor handles on the Rust side, and actually on the TypeScript side as well, the encoding and the decoding of data, like that, like these Borch serializers, like, it handles all that, and it also handles account initialization, these sorts of things. And so these methods, you sort of, like, if you're writing a method here, you're sort of just saying, hey, like, give me the where is it here? So burn 5. Like, I'm basically going to say, like, hey, here's a partial application of a function, which is pretty cool. But like, you're basically saying, hey, give me the count that I've specified here, and like you'll get a there's a whole lot of compile time. For the most part, the compiler is really good in Rust in general, and even with these macros with Anchor, there's some sort of like glass chewing edge cases, but for the most part, you'll get compiler errors. But basically, like, you're specifying the accounts, and then you'll specify that it's mutable. You'll mutate it, and then you'll say, like, hey, like, my state is okay. Here, this question mark here, it's eagerly evaluating result types. So like, a result type is like, you have a left side, which is, I think, okay, and the right side is error, maybe vice versa. And so like, you'll evaluate with a question mark, and if that's an error, your program will exit right there. And so like, technically, like, you could pattern match and like throw a custom error there, but like the Anchor, this will just throw an Anchor error right here. Like, so it's atomic in that way. So yeah, like, if I don't annotate in the context that we were looking at that like this account actually is mutable, like, it won't preserve the state, and like, that's not a compiler error. That's a runtime, like, hey, why isn't my state updating? And then you look and say, oh, my annotation in this macro was not adequate. So
So
even
though Rust is like extremely type safe, known for it, right? It's one of the most safe language out there. You can still screw up. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Especially when you're playing with macros, and like, I was a bit surprised coming from Scala land, where like everything seems to be a trait, and like, you're actually implementing like Scala code, not like a macro, and so I was like it was a bit strange to see macros everywhere in the Rust world. And like, there's sort of like this magic undefined space of macros where like, you're literally bypassing the compiler. Oh, well, fuck, like, you're I want to express that more technically correct. Like, I don't think you're you're definitely not bypassing the compiler, but you're adding additional stuff to the compiler, like, you're feeding additional bytes to the compiler. You're basically adding to the compiler features. You're adding to the features of the language. Is like what a macro is doing, right? So there's magic space there when you're doing that sort of stuff, and Rust has got a lot of it. So if you're gonna do low level programming, Rust is a good option. It's not Haskell, right? Like, it's not pure functional, like, hey, you get what you get. I don't know if anybody here who might listen might say, oh, well, there's edge cases of Haskell too. And there is, but there's much less. There's much fewer, right? There's much fewer. And so now Rest is good. There's loopholes still, but no, for the most part, the compiler is gonna be your friend and give you compiler time errors for this sort of stuff. So anyways, man, I hope some of that stuff was helpful.
Definitely interesting to see how it's built. I really like the idea of being able to split it up. It's kind of like, I'm really big into monorepos, not particularly I don't think a monorepo, in my case at least, doesn't make sense to put all my projects in there. but I'll have a monorepo per project just so I can split stuff up into libraries, publish parts to it to npm, considering I'm in the JavaScript ecosystem, right? And it just makes a lot of sense. It also comes with a it's not always obvious where you make the cut, right? Abstractions, building out abstractions is hard. I'd like to compare it with a butcher. If you give a cow to a butcher, he knows where to cut to get a good piece of meat. If you give me a cow and a knife, I'll probably get out a bunch of meat, but it won't probably be a good fit for what you're looking at, right? Because I'll cut some random stuff right through the meat of it. And I think the same with software. In order to be able to make clean abstractions, you need to have a real good mental model. Like, okay, this goes separately. I think here, steak and paint, sure, kind of logical, right? But you might, as you said, you might even split it up more. Maybe your steak function or your steak package here could be split up in various reusable blocks again. The question is if you have a benefit for that, right? You can keep on splitting, and then as you said, there's a limit in Solana in the runtime that doesn't go too far recursively. So you have to. There's actually limitations to what you can do here, but definitely interesting. I was not aware that you could do this. It doesn't really surprise me, but it's good to have this on the radar now. Definitely something I'm going to look into.
Yeah, where is it? I wonder if I have it here. No, that'll just, you got your star parameter, your asterisk. But if you get into programs here, you've got like this idea of no. So this is steak. So there's no dependencies there. But let's just take out a paint real quick. You look at the cargo
it should
file,
depend on steak,
and you'll see this
craft. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. This relative path to a module. So that's first class cargo Rust support.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like that's why I chose, like, man, I got into this whole crypto thing. I got in as a developer, and like I've been exposed to the other aspects of it, of like the whole like pump and dump and like token value thing and TVL and DeFi and all that stuff after the fact. And but the reason why I chose Solana is for Rust. And if you look at ETH and you look at Solidity, that language does one thing, and it develops ETH contracts. And well, Elm does one thing too. It just builds it just targets JavaScript. You can build web apps with it, but there's levels to this game, right? And I think that Solidity is more of an afterthought to like what like the ETH and like the EVM and like general purpose programming languages, Turing complete programming languages on a blockchain looks like. Whereas Rust is a first class language that any developer should want to work with. And so you get these sorts of things like relative paths and modules. Like that's a cargo thing. That's not a Solana thing, right? So
yeah, they definitely built this on the shoulder of giants, let's say.
That's it, man.
Yeah, and I think one interesting thing to know, I don't know too much about it, low-level stuff, but what I do know is that actually Solana uses LLVM, low-level virtual machine. So you can basically compile Rust to that. You compile C to it. I think they have reference implementation for both.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly sure if you would want to, you could write, let's say C++, target same LLVM, make sure your output's the same. Right, and that's already a powerful abstraction, and they're now adding Move, which seems to be very widely appreciated language for writing smart contracts on Sui and Aptos.
I'm excited about that one. Like I said, I like Rust. I mean, for sure, yeah. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes, right? And like I'm trying to do better about like picking my rabbit holes. You know, like I'm in a good place where like I realize like, okay, I've got product ideas and like I want to build that stuff, but like I got to be more practical and like doing freelance work with the technical experience that I have amassed when fucking around this space for 2 years. Is like I can help people achieve product ideas that they've actually been working on as product people. So there's the whole Solana Rust thing, but then there's the whole comment about Solidity being an afterthought. Move, that's that language does one thing, but there's levels to this stuff that I was saying, and
Yeah.
I'm interested in it, man. So, and but like you said, it's the LLVM. We'll target LLVM with Move,
Yeah.
and there you have it. I'm interested in the whole like programming model with accounts and like Solana. Like technically, like you have to specify all your accounts beforehand. Like there's input and there's output. There's also another reason why Solana is attractive to certain class of developers is because this is concept of like input output,
Yeah.
like no really like global state, right? Whereas like Solidity, like in language itself, and then in the actual runtime, there's just global state everywhere, and that's like you're asking for fucking vulnerabilities. And when we're doing smart contract development, like you need assertions. You need guarantees,
Yeah.
and like a property of Move is that like you can actually verify this shit, right? So lots of cool stuff, man. Lots of
Yeah.
cool stuff out there. It's a nerd scope, dude. I'm like I said, like I'm doing Web 2 dev right now, like, and I'm liking it a lot. Like I'm doing the Elixir stuff with Phoenix. If you ever want to talk about that, hit me up.
Sure.
But yeah, like building an e-commerce website for a buddy of mine, you know, and like
There you go.
looking to make a little money there and do something that like isn't like a magic coin, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're selling t-shirts and stuff like that. So there's just so many nerd scopes out there, and this stuff
Yeah.
is like really nerdy, and like it's really easy to nerd to just there's so many rabbit holes, man. So I'm a bit bummed. I think we're on time. I really would have loved to hear about the whole gum is fun protocol and your
Yeah.
experience developing that shit. So I don't know if you're gonna dip here. I probably will in a few minutes, but that stuff looks exciting. Shout out
Yeah.
to Shek Dev.
Yeah. Shek is amazing.
Dev on,
The
Shek
whole
on Twitter.
the whole gum team, they've been so amazingly helpful to me integrating their stuff. It's amazing to work with them. They did something great. And actually, I came up with a similar idea. The working title I had was Solana ID. By lack of anything better, I think PubKey is a better name, also because it gets Solana out of it. But basically, having a keychain. If I'm okay with sharing my public key to you, I'm also most likely okay with sharing a bunch of my socials with you. And probably other public keys, because we all live in a multi-wallet, multi-identity system. Like we got each other on Twitter, but we might follow each other on Discord as well, and Telegram, whatever. It's a whole mess there. And I think unifying it a little bit and bringing the stuff on chain while giving you control what people can see, or at least what you verified. I think that's a big start. I also think we have to realize it's not going to be watertight. People can still scam. People can still set up fake accounts. Sure, that's something we cannot fix by just adding in the blockchain, right? But keeping the stuff there and persisting it on chain and having a magic experience. So let's say that Rgb.Industries integrates GUM. If you updated your protocol at PubKey, you now log into RGB and then connect your wallet, and it can just fetch it in, and the data's there, right?
Yeah.
I really like the idea of
we can derive these addresses and say, hey, this is my username, this is my bio, this is my and actually it's reversed, because the way as a developer, I'm working with Dreamfinder, he's doing you know, he's the mastermind behind all the RGB stuff. I'm just writing the code, right? And contributing a little bit, you know, but like that's a primitive and vice versa. Like we can encode your RGB balances as an attribute of PubKey, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and so when you go on and you sign on, you say, hey, you've got these token balances, or you've got these, and if like these, because you could draw profile pictures that say, hey, here's my social, and like it actually is like verifiably burned, and these you kind of like take elements of a game and like take it elsewhere. You have like a verifiable banner, like a verifiable banner on your social that says like, I actually stake this stuff, like I'm in this, you know. So it's cool, man. That's for me. I'll just quick comment with the whole social thing. Like I never took a swing at the whole and not that like I can't get involved and throw PRs into this sort of, you know, into these GUM or PubKey and these sorts of things, but social for me is like the biggest use case. Like there's gaming that's intuitive, but social composability, identity, the IDs that are composable you know, like we have our Gmail and OAuth and these sorts of things, like the Web3 version of that, that's actually a use case where Web3 does better.
Yeah.
And like leagues better. And I never swung at that because I feel like it's a no-brainer. Like anybody in their right mind would build a social app on Web3. Like that's what we're all, you know, we're trying to do. But there's issues with like the session keys, and you know, so
Yeah,
like we've got
Gum has apparently a
right.
fix for that, which is great. I also really think there's a use case for basically auto-committing wallets. So a wallet that's basically hidden out of sight, and you set a limit. I will never spend more than one sol. Or you basically top it up, if you will, and it'll just auto-confirm a bunch of things because...
No, that's the session keys. That's the session keys. So like it's twofold. It's like, hey, like we're going to cache this key pair, right? But what you're doing is you're actually delegating like a certain, like you said, one sol to this key pair that's cached in your browser. And there's a PDA that's associated with it on the program side that delegates authority to certain like basically actions, right? You authenticate and then you authorize, right? So it's like, anyways.
There's a ton of things to be explored, and with PUBG, I'm definitely gonna be interested if I want something that will definitely be a motivation. But in any case, so PUBG is built as a system where it's API first. So I started building I'm also coming from a backend side. I'm actually coming from an operations side. I was system engineer, late 90s, early 20s. I'm in my 40s already, so definitely a veteran. But I never got into development because I was like, I'm eager to develop. For me, it was like there's stuff that doesn't exist, and I think I can make this work. So I started just downloading mostly PHP at the time, also Perl, like CGI scripts. I just started tweaking them, and all of a sudden, something worked. Hey, I made something, and then like I'll never write something from scratch. Well, a few years later, I found myself actually writing stuff from scratch, and that's how I got into development. So the reason I'm telling it, I'm coming very much from a backend first, database first. I think like your data structure is basically your DNA, and then you add some endpoints on top of it, and then at some point a front end so you can interact with it, right? Because I like interacting with my APIs through curl, but people like my mom, they don't like to use curl. They're scared if they see a terminal, right? So that's not going to work. For PUBG, I'm considering building a social network, basically something to the like the idea of a lens protocol on Polygon, obviously built on Gum. And one of the things that I'm not interested in running a social network. I don't want to be Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg. Like I'm not at all interested in it. So what I do think is that having this stuff on chain allows us to do stuff that you otherwise cannot do. For instance, let's say I do run PUBG and I start blocking bad actors because they're like racist expressions, something like that. I don't want to have that on my platform. So I'm going to block this person, but I'm doing this on chain. And it's not to shame this person, but this is to indicate people like, hey, this person has been blocked on PUBG. Now, if they want, they can run their local instance of PUBG. It's open source. They can just ignore the block list and run their own, with the group of people that are not offended by these things, run their own group on this platform without me being involved or in control. So it's definitely permissionless in this sense. And I think that's an interesting thing. But also, Drip House, for instance, they give away free NFTs. They give away 100,000 NFTs a week. Well, right now it doesn't cost them anymore, but like until 2 weeks ago, that's a pretty hefty amount of money that you pay. So you don't want to pay. You don't want to give away stuff for bad actors. Now, if I block somebody and Drip House blocks somebody, the next app that integrates something, they probably want to block the same person.
And that's also on chain, right?
That's on chain.
Like they can pick that up and like as a default use case.
Yeah. And this is something that I think is pretty novel, that you like, if I block somebody on Twitter, I will still have to block this person on my GitHub and on my Discord as well if I really don't want to see their face, right?
It's too right. You got to go sign in. You got to find them. They might have a different username, and it's like,
right.
I'm doing my best not to jump into that rabbit hole because, like I said, like for me, like the social is the most no-brainer use case for this stuff. Like like it just leaks better than like what Web 2 offers. And like we're there's some rough edges with the UX, but this stuff is fascinating. Composing identities and being able to take that to not only social sites, but you can, like, the same way that we use OAuth for everything else. Like I'm going to take like my Google sign into everything with it. And then you end up getting with like this proof of humanity, which like with like Vitalik writes a lot in his blogs, where it's because this stuff is all anonymous, right? Like you sort of need something for meaningful governance. You need, like, if we're not going to have hardware enabled stuff, you need one way of actually asserting identity is to put up for stake an anonymous digital asset that means something to somebody, like an ENS, Ethereum name service, or in this case, like a GUM identity, right? And like the more that people spend time building these identities, the less and less they actually want to dispose of them, right? And they become more and more artifacts and meaningful, and you can leverage governance with this sort of stuff. So I'm doing my best not to jump in. I'm like itching to jump into this.
I might drag you into it at some point, because you definitely have more experience with Rust than I do, and I still need to write some programs at some point. So but yeah, it's been super interesting looking at RGB, and actually we touched on a whole bunch of other topics that are super interesting. So thanks a lot for taking the time to hop on. It was a pleasure.
It totally was. I actually see the timer on the top, including our break. We actually are like right on time. So no, man, it was a pleasure. Thanks for bringing me on and give me an opportunity to shout some of the stuff I'm working on, but just kind of talking about the space. And it was a pleasure, man. So
awesome. Anyway, if you're gonna go on a next hackathon, I will definitely put you on the short list again, because I'm pretty sure you'll find something else to nerd out on. So
don't nerd Skype me, man. It's tough out here. I honestly, I'm not going on Twitter these days just because I'm trying to stay away. But maybe I'll give you my Discord so you can hit me there.
Can connect there. Create your pub key so I can find you through that way.
Oh, I'll do that right now, actually.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks everybody who joined or who's watching this later. It was a great pleasure, and catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye.